always watching you. And this river breaks the laws of physics. And these are the 23 craziest Minecraft illusions. And hey, according to the YouTube Pope, no one's ever subscribed to the channel using the side of their finger. So if you want to change that, slide your side into that red button below. It's free and it helps out a ton. No matter where we stand, this crocodile will always be looking at us. And that's because of the illusion of depth. See, the same way that this trick works in the real world, you'll notice that when we get up close, what's happening here is that the face is hollowed out in such a way where with just a few walls, we're able to give the illusion of a turning crocodile head regardless of where we're standing. This chase scene will never end. And the reason for that is because we're chasing ourselves. See, by cleverly using these portals from the Immersive Portals mod, we are able to create our own infinite hallway. And because of the mirror effect that you get from using multiple of these portals, it almost looks like we're chasing ourselves down an infinite sequence. Which would be why that if you turn around, you'll also still be chasing yourself. Or rather, you're getting chased. I honestly don't know how that works. But really, when the physics are this wonky, I don't think anyone else could. And hey, if you're only looking to build one room, then this is a way to get an infinite amount of use out of it. Literally. This illusion feels straight out of an MC Escher painting, because when you look at the walls, you'll see that the stairs somewhat defy gravity. And it's hard to tell which one of these is actually going in the right direction. And if you're not careful with this one, you'll find that it's pretty good at disorienting you. Though I guess if you were to use something like the up and down and all around mod, at that point gravity doesn't matter either, so you'd be able to walk into any of these doors just fine. Make sure to pay attention, because this one's a little confusing. And you'll see what I mean as soon as we start to zoom away from this pyramid. Appropriately called the Pyramid of Confusion, what's happening here is that we have squares built with a certain pattern, so that each of their points looks like a spike coming out of the pyramid. And honestly, looking at this one for too long starts to hurt my head. So we might need some kind of refresher just to give your eyes a break on screen. But genuinely, if you want to build this, I'd recommend just building one of these squares as a sample, and then copy and pasting them through World Edit. That way you can build this headache-inducing build without giving yourself a headache in the process. How do we put this slab in a glass block? Well, we didn't use anything like the world border trick, but rather, it's just that the slab isn't there in the first place. And what I mean by that is clearly visible when we zoom out. Yeah, you get the picture. Taken after this example from Adamax EP, if we build a slab separately and then place our glass block in the foreground, then we can make it look as if all of that giant slab fits perfectly within this tiny glass shell. And then with a piston nearby to sell the illusion, it seems as if we push the slab inside the glass block, even though we obviously know that's not the truth. What's wrong with this building? Well, from this angle, it's hard to tell. But what's really gonna set you off is when you go over to the side and see that none of the blocks that we thought connected actually were. Even this ladder was never actually connected to the real roof above. But what's really going to set you off is when you go over to the side and see that none of the blocks that we thought connected actually were. Even this ladder was never actually connected to the real roof above. And really, it's just that if you space out the blocks in such a way, when you look at it from the right angle, then it gives the convincing amount of even this ladder was never, which is cool, but don't try to get up and close and actually climb that structure. You'll be sorely disappointed. How does this river flow? Because if you try to follow it around with your eyes, it clearly pours down here, but then the water somehow also ascends up to that top level. It's confusing to say the least. But what seems like a break in physics is really just the result of a cleverly placed water feature. Since instead of having a waterfall, we have a water tower that starts to sell the illusion from the right angle. And then by adding in some boats for extra detail, it really starts to look like we did this legit. I want you all to take a look at my new house. Now, it's pretty basic from this angle, but what's really interesting about it is when we step back and yeah, I think you get the point. See, the trick here for selling this illusion is by using directional blocks that we can place sideways. So then when you build your house into a wall and then look up at it, it still looks like it would on the regular floor. Granted, you have to fly up this pathway, but from first person, that's a lot less noticeable than it is in replay mod. But just make sure that you're careful when you step outside of the front door, or rather fall outside of the front door. You can't be too careful with this one. When you're inside, this elevator feels like it could go on forever. And apparently that's more than true. Since what's happening here is that when we press this button, it isn't the floor that's going up through the elevator, but rather the walls that are coming down. Sure enough, as this user shows off, with a little bit of command block trickery and some distinct patterns, we can make it seem as if we're constantly going up this elevator shaft. But when you step outside, it turns out that nothing's actually moving. And while this illusion only really works if you're standing on the inside, it is still pretty cool to watch from the outside as well. Almost like a barbershop pole illusion. This dirt house doesn't look like much, and really from the outside, it's not. But one step through this door, and we're treated to something a lot more special. And really, the secret that's at play here is that we have a portal that's at the entrance of the small house so that we seamlessly teleport you to the inside of a much larger one. And then, as soon as you exit out, you're going to be greeted to that same smaller house. But even though this particular one was done with the help of the Immersive Portals mod, you don't necessarily need to do it like that. Even just having seamless command block trickery would be a way to pull this off in vanilla as well. How did this zombie get so so much bigger than this other one? Well, while I can answer that, the truth is, neither of them are. Or rather, they're both the same size. They're offset in just a way so that this one that's close to us looks bigger in the background, whereas the one that's further away seems to be smaller even though it's not that closer up. And honestly, the whole way that this works is by using a tunnel like this. Since by having those flat geometric shapes, it makes it a lot harder for your eye to tell what's going on, so it just figures that by relative scale, that's how big one zombie is compared to the other, even if, as we know, they're both the same size. This basement looks big, but it's actually smaller than you think, since the truth is that by using the ray tracing features of Bedrock Edition, all we need to do are place down some mirrors, or in this case, red nether brick, as the ceiling to give the illusion that your basement is twice the size that it actually is. And there you go, you double the size of your build without having to double the price as well, giving us a cheap trick that I'm more than happy to use for my wallet. With the new mangrove trapdoor, we're able to make a pretty easy illusion, since if we just place one of these onto the front of a dispenser and flip it up like so, then from the right angle, it looks as if the eyes are following you along the camera. And there you have it, just like that, we've got a little watchful robot to keep an eye on you. Or if you want that same illusion, but you want a different eye color, then by just placing a fence post behind the trapdoor, you get the same effect, making this
ما عندنا وقت، نزلة واحدة ونخلص المهمة. أهم شيء هدفنا يبقى سليم.
يلا المهمة بدت. برجر 6 انت أول واحد تنزل.
الكاميرات مقفلة، انزل بسرعة.
diverse in how it works. From this angle, the pyramid doesn't look that special, but when you stand above it, we get a pretty weird effect. It's almost as if the pyramid itself is making into a rounded square of some sorts. And really, the whole reason this happens is because even though we have the blocks at different elevations, there's no shadows to be seen. So your brain never really recognizes the depth that's actually coming in. And instead, we just get this weird pillow effect. If we were to build out our wall with these alternating zigzag shapes that go deeper and deeper in, then once you stand at the top and look down, you'll notice that we created these weird ripple effects that come through your wall. But I should clarify that to get this effect, you can't just look at it dead on, but rather for it to work, you're gonna have to look down towards the bottom right, which is the way that the waves go. And looking at this example made out of sandstone stairs, it's almost like we got our own slice of the sand dunes right here at our very base. How is it possible that these stairs can always be going down? Because unlike other illusions, we're seeing the shadows here, so it sure does look like they're constantly going down. There's no trickery that way. So how do we get these Penrose stairs in Minecraft? Well, as Mumbo Jumbo shows off, the real secret here really just comes down to angles. Since, as you'll notice, we built most of the staircase going down as you'd expect, but it's just this little gap here that really sells it. And by filling in an extra gap of blue blocks so that the seam still works when you're looking at it, then we can make it so that when you look at it diagonally downwards, this staircase gets a whole lot more suspicious. If you have a fear of heights, this might make you feel a little uneasy, but don't worry, because the truth is that this hole's no deeper than just having a flat sheet of paper. But the reason that it would trick you to feel that way is because by using flat colors like this black and white, you're not going to see a lot of variety between the textures, which allows us to then make this pattern, which in such a way gives the illusion of it getting deeper and deeper to the center of the hole, even though, as we can clearly tell, that's not the case. Which of these yellow blocks is lighter? Well, it might be easy to choose these ones, but if we remove the other colors, you'll notice that they're actually just the same color block. So why does this happen? Well, when you place the block on two differently patterned backgrounds, then it'll start to have a different hue when you look at each one, because the yellow seems brighter than the green blocks next to it, but darker than the white blocks next to it. Your brain fills in the gaps and makes one look much darker to you than the other one, given for a really confusing illusion. Though I guess it doesn't work if you're colorblind, but maybe it's confusing for a different reason then. When you stand still, the blocks here look pretty basic. I mean, they're placed in a weird way, but it's just a grid effect, right? But it's when you start to fly around the outside that you notice that this dot matrix can really start to hurt your head. Sure enough, by having a 3D grid of these blocks separated like so, when you look at it from different angles, you get some pretty interesting effects. And honestly, I think what really sells this illusion here is by using some of the flat color blocks like we have in this example. Because if we tried to mix it up instead, then we'd just be left with sky grid. In Minecraft, you've got regular glass, stained glass, tinted glass, and now foggy glass. But really, this is just an illusion that we were able to pull off by using different layers of colored glass in the background. Since by stacking together walls of stained glass with a 1 block distance between them, you get this neat fog effect as it starts to get darker and darker into the glass. Which works if you want a frosted glass window, or it might be a cool cool way of getting a bottomless pit effect like this. But again, just remember that 1 block distance between layers, otherwise it doesn't work as well. Which door do you want to go through? Because if you're not a fan of this acacia door, we've also got a warped door, an oak door, and even a birch door to choose from. But even if you were to choose one of those doors, it still begs the question, how do we pull off all this geometry? But much like the inside of this box, the way that we're able to do this is through the Immersive Portals mod. And what you saw at first as a ring of sea lanterns is actually a cleverly hidden portal to a new dimension. And that's where all these rooms exist, because obviously they can't exist in the same space. And really, I think this would be a fascinating idea for a new adventure map. Think about this as your level select screen, although instead of walking down a hallway to choose which room you go to next, you just walk around the same cube and then choose it there. I think that'd be fun. Why does this middle part of the square look so different? Well, if we're flying around from up here, it's tough to notice. It just looks like it's floating up there. But once you get up close, it's easier to see that what's actually causing this is that we just offset some of the pixels that should have been there in the pattern. And sure enough, by using a trick that simple, as soon as you step back, it really does sell the illusion. This user made what appears to be a beautiful painting laid out on an easel, but obviously you're not able to get that level of depth through just a flat texture. So what's really happening here is that we have a staircase of that build for the painting that goes deeper than the easel itself. But when you look at it dead on, it sure does look like it's painted there, which goes to show that if you want something to look extra complex in 2D, you've really just got to build it in 3D and lie. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like.
We get it. You don't